Hello, everyone. Shahzad Khokhar with Accelirate, and I am joined by a couple of my wonderful colleagues, Janelle and Zeke. And today we are going to talk about provider referral management and how Agentic and AI in general is helping improve what the solution's been. We've been in the Salesforce business and in the HLS business specifically for many, many years. And we've been building PRM for a long time, all across the board, all sorts of providers that we work with. So from hospital systems to therapeutic clinics, right? Physical therapy to specialty physician groups, home health, mental behavior health, medical device companies, all that fun stuff. Wherever referrals kind of come into place, this has been the Salesforce solution. And now with the advent of Agentic and AI, there are actually opportunities to create even more efficiencies in the process, which is what our PRM solution does. So we're going to talk about that today. In terms of the audience itself, folks that really should be interested in this should be folks that run these businesses. So if you're a director of intake and you are concerned about reducing intake workloads, on average, using Agentic, you can go down by 20 to 40% of the actual workload itself. If you're the operations person, like a COO, for instance, or like a clinical operations person, and you're looking for visibility into the referral process, with Agentic, we've seen kind of conversions happening up to 30% more. Right? If you're more of a business development and like physician relations person, and maybe you're a smaller business and you have a lot of that tracking happening in spreadsheets, and you don't really know what physicians are driving volume, who's sending you referrals, who maybe used to send you referrals and is not sending you referrals anymore. Or perhaps you're the founder of one of these businesses, right? And then, you realize that the growth, especially if you're localized, the growth is really dependent upon your relationships, which is hard to scale. If you are acquiring like other locations, for instance, you need systems, not just relationships. And so those are the kind of folks, you're going to want to listen to how we improve that entire process, the spectrum of PRM end to end. Okay, so that being said, let's get into it. Janelle, let's start with you. Maybe first tell the audience what you do for Accelirate, and maybe talk a little bit about when you speak with healthcare organizations, right? You're talking to them every day. What are some of the common referral management challenges that you hear from customers?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Janelle Evans here with Accelirate. As Shahzad said, I work closely with customers to help, connect systems, streamline workflows, and just help solve complex integration challenges. So excited to be here today and looking forward to sharing more about referral management. So like you said, one of the biggest themes that we hear a lot from customers today is that referral management is just still incredibly fragmented, right? Like many organizations are managing referrals across multiple systems, which makes it really difficult to know where a referral stands at any given time. Because of that, I think leaders are really looking for better visibility, like where a referral is getting lost or delayed, how long they're taking to process, and where there's referral leakage still. So with staffing constraints across healthcare, organizations, I think, are looking for ways to reduce that manual administrative work so that teams can really spend more time focusing on patients and like strengthening that provider relationship.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of common. And, some of that stuff is historic, right? Like it hasn't changed. And I think it's important to kind of help identify where the gaps are. And I think over time, what I've seen happen over the last 10 years is we've taken one problem and, made it better. Then we've looked at another gap and made it better. Verification of benefits still, it takes a little while to kind of get the VOB process done because it's external vendors. We got to rely on those, right? Yes, we have MuleSoft, and yes, there's Health Cloud, and yes, we connect with the EHR, but then there are still processes that are dependent, right, on external vendors to kind of deliver that service. So there are still some gaps out there. Maybe, talk a little bit about just those gaps, right? A lot of times, based on what you just said, when people especially leadership starts to look at scaling the business, what visibility or accountability gaps do you think tend to come up most?
Yeah, so I think that many organizations, it's not even just that they're, I guess it's not that like a specific referral process isn't working. It's just that a process has like evolved over time, right?
Mhm.
So it's that it's difficult to see the whole end-to-end picture, kind of like you said, right? Or because a referral isn't just happening in one system, it moves across the EHR, the CRM, scheduling systems, sometimes even over emails, faxes, spreadsheets, right? So it's without those systems being connected that each team is only really seeing a piece of the journey instead of that whole patient experience, right? So that makes it difficult to identify where the bottlenecks are, understand where those referrals are dropping off, and really measure how efficiently patients are moving through that process. So I think, like you mentioned, that's really where the integration plays that key role. So by connecting systems, organizations can really create that more complete view of the referral journey,
Yes.
obviously improving that data visibility, and then give both the clinical and those operational teams the information that they need to make better decisions. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. I'm actually, as you were talking, I was thinking about a particular customer that had been acquiring different locations. And it was interesting because each team was given like their own sort of playground to play within Salesforce, and they came up with their own definitions and their own processes. And so, you know, even the team that worked within the same business unit did not know what the other team was doing. And so a lot of times when we do these health assessments, right? One of Accelerate's kind of key offering is coming in, since we are, HLS experts, healthcare and life science experts. This is, most of our business is built around this kind of domain. We're able to map Salesforce design, architecture, and best practice with how healthcare works. And then there are nuances, right, to certain businesses, right? If you have PhD scientists whose time needs to be sold, for instance, that is tracked a little differently than, setting up an appointment, for instance. And so I think it's really important to collaborate and expose those barriers and merge where we can and reuse where we can and make sure that the taxonomy of the entire process, and the business units looks the same. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of critical that happens. So maybe we'll ask one more question and then perhaps we can go to Zeke, or I can maybe talk a little bit about how we, between Salesforce and our PRM solution, how we solve it. But maybe talk a little bit about, since you work kind of across the board in terms of the size of the companies, right? We have small businesses as customers, we have commercial accounts, we have a few enterprise accounts that we now work with. So are there any like recurring patterns that you see regardless of the size of the team in terms of how they manage referrals?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, regardless of an organization size, it's really about like working with incomplete or outdated information, right? So even if a referral is received quickly, there can be delays because of insurance eligibility or benefits not being verified. Maybe patient information is incomplete, or staff is needing to manually move, between multiple systems and put information where it's needed. So obviously that doesn't matter, about the organization size, but I would say even though those steps seem really small, they do definitely add up. Not only just because it's creating additional work for the staff, but because ultimately it's slowing down scheduling and then ultimately, delaying patient care. So that's why we're seeing, just such a big focus on connecting systems and really streamlining processes earlier on in the referral journey. I would say integration really provides that visibility, but accurate eligibility and then, getting that patient information up front is what enables that team to confidently move those patients through the rest of that process. So reducing administrative work and avoiding that unnecessary delay in care is super, super important. I would love to push it back to you. And maybe you can, since I mentioned, eligibility, maybe talk about eligibility verification and our connection to Cordio.
Yeah, interesting, right? That's a brand new partnership, Ashley, that we have. Kind of exciting. I've been doing this for a very long time. We have app exchange apps that have been used over the years for eligibility verification, but none of those apps kind of got to 100% or even 90% or even 80% of accuracy. We typically would get 60 to 70% of eligibility is right, and then there were still an army of people that was manually kind of doing the verifications. And I think one of the unique things that Cordio's done is this massive database of 2,500 service providers that they check eligibility against, and they're using AI, right, to rank like what's the most accurate piece of information. So you can definitely get closer to that perfection. There's still, of course, things that might fail or would require a human being in the process, but a lot more can now be automated. So I am absolutely excited. I know they're working on an app exchange app, so we're excited to work with them on that as well. But I think maybe for the audience, maybe it makes sense for me to show them what our solution overall looks like. I mean, it's a difficult, challenging problem that we're solving for. I'll bring up what our overall kind of setup or architecture itself looks like and just briefly, obviously, provide an overview. If folks have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Um, this is essentially the totality of what the solution looks like, right? In plain language, your referrals show up all the way on the left-hand side. So you have providers that are sending you referrals, you have patients directly reaching out to you, you might have web forms, you have fax-based, um, right? God bless HIPAA, looks like fax will live on forever. So you have faxes coming in even today, and so on and so forth, right? Sometimes the work comes in from a lab or whatnot. So there's an integration layer to the solution. It supports HL7 messaging as well. And you come into what the core box here that you see in the middle, right? It's Salesforce Health Cloud, can be built on Sales Service, just requires a little more configuration. But you kind of manage your intake, your life cycle, your relationships, your VOB, the verification processes, the scheduling, the integration with the EHR, the self-service patient portal, and then there's a whole bunch of fun stuff now that's happening with AI, right? So we have agents, these are agents that can be surfaced through multiple interfaces. So you have a single agent, let's say the scheduling agent, and I can show you what it looks like. But it can actually help schedule an appointment with a confirmed patient whose verification of benefits has now taken place. You created the patient, let's say in the EHR, and you're just looking to actually just create an appointment. You can actually surface an AI agent via Agentforce through text messaging. You can do it through your portal. If it's an internal team that needs to do it, they can do it through Slack. So the same agent can be surfaced through multiple channels. I can actually show you guys what that looks like from a Slack interface and a text interface perspective. And then from an outbound messaging perspective, right? Whether it's getting, let's say a patient just went in and they just got some service and you want to get feedback from them. You have Marketing Cloud sending out a text message survey, for instance. Again, it's HIPAA compliant, coming in, directly goes into Data 360, becomes part of a segment that you want to target in one way or another, whether it's additional care that needs to be delivered, or whether it's messaging that needs to be delivered, whether it's another service that we think, let's say I'm a hospital, I mean, maybe we have a hospital, something even basic like, hey, your diagnosis is let's say, somebody's diabetic and the doctors think that they should exercise 5 times a week, for instance. We can give them membership with a 25% discount at the gym that's at the hospital. We know that it's somebody and their spouse and they have 2 children. We can actually do that outbound messaging using some of this stuff, right? So it's kind of interesting how by capturing the end-to-end spectrum of the referral process, you can actually, not only is it better for business, which is what obviously the executives are responsible for, but you're actually helping provide care, right? It's a population health response as well, besides just referral management. So this is kind of what the larger, solution looks like. I can come back to what specific screens look like, but this is generally speaking where the solution is happening, Janelle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now that you've seen what the solution looks like, let's go back to 1982. Companies still do this on a spreadsheet, right? Um, What do you want to say to folks like that are still using spreadsheets to manage referral?
I mean, I would say it's a reality for some, right? Like, I think that it's just simply a function of, just some that, referral workflows have evolved over time, right? And teams have just built manual processes to keep things moving. So it's just that, it's not necessarily that maybe the tool itself doesn't work. It's just that because they've had to piecemeal, things together to keep things working, they don't have that connected end-to-end view of their referral journey that they might like. So making it difficult to track the progress, identify those bottlenecks, and ensure accountability. So it's just, they need to make it more efficient. But as organizations are being asked to do more with less, those gaps can start to have a much bigger operational and financial impact. So I would shoot that back to you, right? I would say, as a lot of provider organizations are being asked that question, right? Why should they be looking at the business impact of fragmented referral processes?
I mean, growth and scale and profitability, right? I mean, it's kind of the basics of any business, right? Why should you be looking to improve your business? And I think what ends up happening is when we go and set up PRM for a client, they gain a baseline level of intelligence that they did not have before. And what that tends to do is around about a quarter worth of actually having PRM in place. Uh, it gives them enough data to use intelligence about their processes to now start making intelligent decisions on where improvements need to be made, right? And so it becomes this constant life cycle of, I understand where my business is. I now can see where the leaks are, where the broken pipes are, and one at a time or two at a time, you come up with a priority list. You start addressing those gaps and you start to bring up the scale of your business, the amount of patients that you can actually serve with the same staff, for instance, right? And so it ends up impacting your bottom line. So, for instance, if you can reduce your referral leakage, it could be something as simple as one day you got 28 referrals and then you don't get anything for like another week, for example, right? Um, you don't have the staff to immediately do that follow-up. But with an agent, for instance, in place, and with reminders and automation, you can actually do that outreach where a human being is not the bottleneck of doing that outreach. So you're reducing the number of people that needed to be called back that same very day, right? Like when let's say I need to take my son somewhere because, he was being silly and he did something and needs to go see a doctor. If the doctor doesn't respond to me within an hour or two, I'm calling another doctor, right? I'm
Yeah.
not saying, oh, they had only one person. They might have gotten 28 referrals. Let me wait on them, right? There's a care and a function of time like this. There's a correlation there. So one reason would be to reduce the leakage, right, in your referrals. Second is your intake is just faster. So I don't know if you guys see this because young people don't see doctors as often, but right,
That's not fair, but
that's
maybe true.
not my son is on the autism spectrum, and so I have to fill in a lot of detailed forms, for instance, for him. And intake is almost always a project for him because you have to start with when did you first get diagnosed? What are the diagnoses? What else has he seen? Does he have speech? Does he have PT? Does he have functional behavior? There's a whole list of slew of things, where is he on the spectrum? And so what the PRM solution is doing is it's speeding the process of that intake. So you could basically load, let's say, some intake document that you may have done for another provider and let us extract that information out and make it automatic, right? That's one way that you're speeding that up. You could push in your eligibility information. That's one way to speed it up, right? We are automatically running some processes in the background and only surfacing things that may be outstanding to you. So overall, again, to answer your question, why you reduce the the actual referral leakage, you increase the intake time. And then really what you get from a relationship perspective is provider intelligence, right? I'll give you another example, right? In the mental health kind of business and overall like substance abuse business, right? Not every clinic is certified to take care of or handle every type of patient. And so there's a lot of this relationship that happens where, let's say you're category A, B, and C, and there are referrals happening back and forth between those types of clinics. And so one of the first time I dealt with somebody like that, 6 years ago now, and that business unfortunately went skyrocketed during COVID because people were just kind of sitting around and hanging, and a lot of that, mental health, cases went up, and substance abuse cases went up, unfortunately. But we had to look at for executives who's sending them referrals and who are they sending referrals to, and is there correlation between who are we sending patients to, and are they reciprocating that relationship, right? If I send somebody in a month, let's say 30 patients, but they only sent me two, and then there's another clinic that sent me 20 and I only sent them five, well, I should probably be reciprocating or at least looking at why are my staff members not sending them patients, or why are somebody not sending me patients while I'm sending them all these patients. Maybe I need to reevaluate that business relationship, right? And because I have the relationship data in Salesforce and I have my numbers, like how much, revenue is tied to those, I can make a very intelligent decision now as to who should I be working with, right? Anyway, there's a lot of aspects to this. I can talk about this for a long time, but we have limited time. So what
No,
else?
No, I think you answered that really well. I also think you kind of went into my next question about how AI, plays a role in answering those questions. But I guess, do you want to go in further, I guess, of how providers can take advantage of AI playing a role there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that was the purpose of the discussion is and I kind of, alluded to that at the beginning of the conversation. AI is helping us now address yet a few more gaps in the process, right? And you'll see, so like within the IDP instance, for instance, the accuracy of how we're able to extract data out and then take that next best action. That's one place where AI is helping us, right? Scheduling, like I mentioned before, via multiple channels is another place where AI is helping us. Being able to self-serve patients with, at least some level of question, like if somebody's looking for, a report, or they're looking for an explanation of certain type of medication that was given to them, there's a first line of response that AI can actually generate within the PRM, context, right? And so it's expediting all of that process. We mentioned Cordio. Cordio now has an AI layer, which is, kind of like their proprietary way of determining where the eligibility actually lives. And we're able to, with very high accuracy now, using that AI tool, tell what the next best action should be, right? If it's coming back to the patient, if it's talking to the provider, if it's talking to the payer, all of those things are improvements, right? They solve yet another part of this process. And if you look at anything end to end, right, AI is going to be as effective as the weakest link in the chain, right? And at this point in time, I think verification of benefits is that weakest link in the chain because it relies on external entity. So I'm super excited because I think with Cordio, we're going to be able to hopefully address that and make the entire process a lot more efficient. Again, allowing providers to service a lot more patients with the staff that they have already.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, one more thing I think that you can answer for the executives that are trying to scale their organizations. Why are visibility and accountability becoming such critical concerns in the referral management process?
Again, it has to do with the bottom line, right? It's how are you running your business? How efficient are you? I was on a panel at Columbia. We were talking about is AI real or is it a fad? And there was this MIT study that came out around 6 months ago that said 90% plus of AI projects fail, and yet what was not as popularly distributed was within the same questionnaire was the next question, which was where are you likely to spend money in 2026? And of course, the same executive said AI. So even though the projects may not have been successful, that is certainly the direction, right? It's newer technology. It has improved, over the last 6 months. There are some gotchas, of course, and we can get into those, I think, as we talk about implementation, Zeke. Maybe I want to bring you into the conversation, right? Because we've had certain situations, and again, we'll talk about some of those situations. But that's where AI is, right? It's real, it's tangible. We've seen results now, as opposed to like 2 years ago, right? When it was first announced, we did a lot of POCs, kind of sort of work, not really, but we're starting to see some tangible results as the technology matures. So that being said, Zeke, let's bring you into the conversation. Let's talk about implementation, right? Almost every new prospect and even the existing prospects, right? They want to do an AI project because it's the next best thing now. And if they're not doing AI, then their bosses are coming to them saying, why are you not doing state of the art? This is the cutting edge stuff. Everyone should be doing AI now. So maybe start with something like, if let's say I'm an executive of one of these provider clinics, one of the first questions they would ask is, well, how long would it take to build or implement AI in my organization? And I know it's a kind of a loaded and a very wide-ranging questions, but I know as somebody that implements these solutions, you get asked that question a lot of times. So how do you answer that question? Like how long does it take for me to bring AI into my business?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, hello everyone. I'm Zeke. I work on the implementation team here with Accelirate. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for like 4+ years ish. Most of my background is in analytics, but I have dealt with the whole suite of Salesforce products and lately a lot of Agentforce implementations. So excited to be here today. I've enjoyed sitting and watching the conversation between you two. I could listen to you guys talk about AI all day, but it's my turn. And yeah, as you said, Shahzad, like one of the number one reasons we hear from teams when we're going into organizations and, we're asking, why do you want to implement AI? I'd say the number one reason is my boss told me I had to. But to answer your question, AI is becoming, a part of every conversation that we have with our clients. Like even if the implementation we're currently on is not about AI, it's still floating up in the background and everyone wants to know how long is that going to take. So that's a really common question I hear, and it's a fair one, right? Like these are generally redo. That's a common question I hear all the time, and it's a fair one. Many organizations obviously want to look before they leap and understand the time and effort it's going to take prior to beginning an implementation. Unfortunately, the best answer I can give really is it depends. So it depends on the architectural maturity of your organization. There could be a lot of prior steps that need to be completed before we can go in and build agentic capabilities. That being said, like assuming your organization is like adequately prepared, and what does adequately prepared mean, right? It means your business processes are clearly defined with distinct accountabilities at each step of your processes. It means your data is centralized, verified, consistent, accessible. Your data inputs and outputs, like communication channels, are set up and mature between those. And it means your end users are effectively trained on your BI software platforms of choice, let's say, for instance, Salesforce, and they already integrated into their daily workflows. Now, assuming you have all of that in place, you could actually be looking at a pretty quick turnaround for your AI implementation because really all the heavy lifting for AI is in that prep work and in the foundational data and business processes that your organization is built on. Now, that being said, when I look at, and all of that to say, this is the answer you really want. When I look at the portfolio of agentic projects we've done, they range from like 2 weeks to 3 months. I don't think I've ever had one take longer than 3 months. You might have a different experience, Shahzad, but that's what we're looking at.
Yeah. I mean, so two things, right, that kind of stand out for me. I think one is um, for serious, serious buyers only. But folks that are interested, and to answer your question of like, what is the current state of the art for a particular business, we do offer an AI assessment offering, right? So, and we look at all the various aspects of, well, what does it take? Like we're saying, what's the governance process today?
Right.
What does your data look like? What does your infrastructure look like? What does the change management look like?
What do you
Right.
need to do next to get there?
Correct. Where's the leadership in terms of their understanding and maturity level of what AI? So there's a whole bunch of aspects of doing that assessment, and then we give you like a grading score in terms of where your org may be today, and then what the AI use cases may be, and then we work with the leadership on kind of coming up with a list of priorities and then kind of executing that. But there are businesses, and I have a few in mind right now that we're working with where folks are really up to speed and they just want to go and implement, right? These agents. And so we have several customers, right, like that have come to us and said, here's a very defined question of what I want my AI to be able to answer. What do I need to do to build it? And then we've gone back and kind of reverse engineered. Well, you need this data sheet from here. You need this FAQ here. You need to connect to this database here, right? We need to kind of go and get this external LLM model perhaps connected. So that execution looks quite different than I think we need to do something with AI. And then there we will start with like an assessment. So, you know,
Yeah, no, of course. I was being a little facetious earlier. I just wanted to inject some humor into the conversation. But no, totally. There are plenty of organizations that actually have legitimate use cases for AI and are set up to implement them. Yes.
So let's talk about like realistic expectations, right? Like AI is not magic. Like, my grandma might say, and it not do that. And like, no, grandma, no, that is not for AI to solve. But in terms of like setting expectations, right? Um, what can it solve today? What problems, what kind of problems? And you kind of alluded to that in the beginning, but
Yeah.
what do you think if you just focus on like data and infrastructure, let's just frame it. So ignore change management and leadership and governance for a second. Not that you should, but just in terms of like setting the technology expectations, what can we expect from it?
Yeah. You mentioned, like, when you said the word expectations, my heart kind of jumped a little bit. That's one of the scariest things to talk about with a client when you're going into these conversations with AI, because it can do a lot, right? It's a really new and exciting technology with a lot of applications. But unfortunately, that does kind of mean people are shooting for the moon sometimes when they shouldn't be. But I'll start with like a conceptual response here on AI in general, and then I'll get into some examples. But something I like to say, and I get lots of opportunities to say it, is that AI is not architecture. Some people view AI as being this like silver bullet that like magically delivers them, as you said, magic, like delivers them from all their problems, but that's not really the case. It's a game of inputs and outputs. AI. So if you're feeding your agent, your model, your automated process, your agentic analytics, whatever it is that you're trying to do, if you feed it junk data, you're not going to see value out of implementing it. It's AI, and of course it varies use case to use case, but broadly, I kind of like to think of AI as one of the last things that you can sort of arrive to as an organization in your business intelligence journey. It's like the culmination or the endpoint of your organization's like BI architecture. Now,
Yeah.
if you want an agent that can schedule calls for you or fetch answers from a data library, those are pretty simple and easy lifts. But as your use case complexity increases, the foundational and architectural requirements underlying that use case are also going to increase in complexity.
Yeah.
But broad strokes use cases. Sorry, did you want to jump in with something?
No. Please finish your thoughts.
Yeah. So like broad strokes use cases, like when I go into like these pre-sales calls with clients or like these discovery sessions, and they want AI, but like maybe maybe this is one of those situations where their boss told them they had to use AI, but they're not really sure where they want to use it, right? So if you want to start integrating AI into your business processes, into your organization's workflows, the broad strokes use cases, the places where I think AI really shines, especially for like a general audience, natural language interfaces for simple automations. So what does that mean? It means that AI can deliver value on like simple, repeatable tasks and make accessing those automations easier for end users. So things like scheduling, note taking, querying. You mentioned earlier, Shahzad, like a patient portal, like maybe they just have some simple questions about their medication. It'll be much faster to get that through an agentic solution than it would be like to call the office and like try and get a hold of your doctor, right? Summarizing information, triggered events. These are all really excellent use cases for AI. And I recommend pursuing these kinds of use cases for a first implementation, especially. And if we're talking about referral management, PRRM is a great example, right? It's like it's a specific, well-defined use case. It's not a purely AI solution, but as you said, Shahzad, as like new developments come out in the world, the wide and wonderful world of technology, these processes sort of cumulatively improve over time at various steps along the way. So the PRM solution that we built out, it's not a purely AI solution. It's a solution that we've been building out that has worked for years in Salesforce Health Cloud, but we've applied AI to those specific processes within the overall process where it makes the most sense. So that's like scheduling. That is the IDP. So for some organizations, AI can shine in like more niche cases, such as like picking out patterns from large complex bodies of data, but those solutions are going to require a more mature data foundation. So if you're an organization looking to implement AI, but you're not really sure where to start, pick an easy win. Find those places where you can improve end user experience through natural language interfaces, and where you have those simple automations that you're kind of repeating every day, day in and day out.
That's awesome.
Very well said, Zeke.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think I want to show a couple of screenshots of our solution here before I ask
Please
you
do.
that next question, because I think you talked about like actual implementations. I think it'd be fun to talk a little bit about, what have we done and what have we learned from some of those, projects, because as the technology matures, so does our understanding of the change management aspect of what does it take? What are the gotchas? What are the things that we never thought about this, right? Because it's newer technology. So let me quickly share a couple of, PRM screenshots. I actually want to share the, can you guys see the slideshow?
Yep.
Okay, so we already saw the screen, but this is a custom app that sits on top of your health cloud. And so there's a dashboard view again. Like I said, we're looking at referrals, we're looking at trends. There's notifications for new referrals coming into the system. There's an IDP component. So this screenshot's actually showing the MuleSoft platform. This is an actual referral forms for a physical therapy clinic that's come in. You can see the data that was extracted using IDP. You can see the patient actually being created and the kind of information that was tracked on this particular patient. The diagnosis is here, VOB, pair information is there. The fact that it was created, this is a separate screenshot, of course. I just kind of condensed it to show it. But once the verification of benefits happens, there's an automatic creation of the patient within the EHR. Remember, this solution does not replace the EHR. That's still your clinical system of record. What we're doing here is referral management, is outreach, is scheduling, is VOB. And so you keep the non-clinical staff here, and the clinical staff kind of stays within your EHR environment. But, we can do cool, fun things like, let's say your PT, if this is a physical therapy clinic, if they wrote a note saying, I've seen this patient 6 weeks, it's not enough, right? Their problem is going to need another 6 weeks of therapy. That doesn't need to be a conversation. The fact that that was written in a clinical note, that clinical note is now in Health Cloud. We can read that note, send a notification out to the provider, have them send a new referral in, and kind of automate the process so that care doesn't stop, right? That 7th and the 8th and the 9th appointment kind of happens in that flow. So that's fun. Here is Zeke, as you were talking about, using AI. So these are basically, this is the same agent, two separate interfaces, right? One is the portal, and you can kind of see the conversation that the agent is actually having, which is, hey, what time works for you? This is the doctor that you picked. Here's a time that you picked. Here's a confirmation, right? So just again, we're looking at what the person is, looking at the resourcing available within the clinic. You're able to do this kind of automatically using Agentforce. And then one of the things that we do for the internal staff, this is kind of fun, is as the patient gets onboarded, right, there's a channel within Slack that automatically gets created, this patient card, right, which is all the information that we know about this person, gets automatically created. And then, within 30 days, of course, this will get archived, but just kind of automating. So if you were, let's say, the front office staff, and all you care about is scheduling, approvals, and the kind of the admin stuff, you don't even have to go to the backend systems. You can just stay in Slack, right? Look at the patient card and just issue instructions, and AI will actually carry out the actual tasks, whether they are in Health Cloud or the EHR or somewhere else, right? So it's kind of cool. You have a single interface, which is Slack, but you're actually executing tasks in the appropriate system where those tasks need to be. So, I think it's a lot more optimized now with AI added to the process. So let's come back, right? Let's come back to what have we seen? What is working? What is not working? You have your favorite AI stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned that MIT study. They're asking like lessons learned from projects implemented. I've been working with organizations for about a year now, a year plus. Like Agentforce is relatively new, but you mentioned the MIT study earlier, which is like a lot of these implementations fail. Why is that, right? In my experience, the most common mistake I see in organizations trying to implement AI today is, and this applies to organizations of any size. So if you're SMB or if you're enterprise, the most common mistake I see is organizations trying to bite off more than they can chew. So like AI, which is really large language models, they're perceived as this really exciting technology, like rightfully so, right? When we first started seeing LLMs generate images and videos and music and like generating natural human speech and text, generating code, building entire software solutions on its own, right? Like I don't know about you guys, but that blew my mind. And I was kind of terrified, honestly. But it was this huge moment where a lot of people saw all this exciting stuff happening in rapid succession. And they thought, with AI, like anything is possible. And the name and the branding of like AI, it's LLMs, but we call it AI. That reinforces that narrative for the broad general public of people. And what I see happening is that leads to organizations wanting to jump in head first to their first AI implementation and try and transform their entire business from the ground up as a first step. Like that excitement is just really driving, and rightfully so. I mean, it's an exciting technology, but just because it's AI does not mean you should throw all caution and planning out the window, right? In my experience, the most successful, and we've had a few successful AI implementations, the most successful AI implementations and journeys that I have been a part of all pursued relatively simple, realistic, low investment, high ROI use cases. The first few implementations, as with any business transformation, are key to generating like stakeholder and end user buy-in, right? So if you try to reinvent your organization on the first go around, you're eventually going to get lost in the weeds and see a lot of your investment wasted. And so I encourage organizations to identify specific realistic use cases for their first couple of implementations, for instance, your referral process. Because the smaller you keep those use cases, the more easily you'll be able to exercise governance over how AI is being implemented in your organization. And again, the same way that we've used AI to sort of cumulatively improve the PRRM, the referral management process, I think organizations should be looking to utilize AI in the same way. Don't try and do it all at once. Like it'll build up over time. So Shahzad, I know there was a couple Agentforce implementations we've done in the past that had some issues. I don't know if we want to discuss those on this call or if you wanted to offer your perspective.
Yeah, well, I think those are more like lessons learned. Again, like I said, as technology matures, right? we get better at deploying technology and we understand where the gotchas may be. I think one common one that we were experiencing last year was just overage in terms of usage and how the licensing works for like, the flex credits and for like the data 360 credits. And so we did run into a couple of situations where the type of expense or billing that happened was not something that the clients had expected. And so, of course, we're able to work with Salesforce around those situations. But I think we're starting to better understand how billing works because it's not the same way as the per user per month licensing that used to work for most of the other Salesforce products. So I think that's one thing to be careful about is to be able to kind of assess that, have a good gauge, have a governance model, have gates in place in terms of how the usage is actively going on. Think about what data do you really need to make decisions. Can you narrow the scope of, let's say, how much data is actually used for any, the first time you train versus what happens, once it's a setup model, for instance. So yeah, I mean, there are issues to address there. The other thing that I think I'll mention is just, again, it goes back to the first item that you discussed, which was expectations, right? So some leaders expect Agentforce to be, ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, and you can't go and ask Agentforce generalized questions, right? It's trained on data that's in Salesforce or data that you bring into Salesforce, and so we do have situations where we can connect with an external LLM, run a particular question, and bring that data back, or the reverse of that, where you can set up like an MCP and APIs and let an external AI model access Salesforce almost as like infrastructure, like Salesforce calls it headless Salesforce, for example, right? So there are ways to still leverage it for agentic use cases, but we have to make sense of what the customer is trying to do and what is most cost effective and actually functional for that particular use case. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think this was fun and productive, and hopefully folks, joined us and that joined us had a few, learning to take from this. I'd love to learn from them as well. So if you guys have any questions, if you want to teach us stuff, please reach out to us. I think as last words, Janelle and Zeke, any parting words of wisdom, if there was one thing that somebody could take from this talk, what do you think that should be? Maybe we'll start with Janelle first.
Oh man, parting words of wisdom from Janelle. Many people don't ask for wisdom from me. Just kidding. No, I guess I would just say that if any of this resonated with you, and you are an organization with, a referral management system that is still, using many different systems and need to find a way to connect. Obviously, you've seen the pictures, you've heard us talk. If you would like to connect, feel free. We would be more than happy to, chat with you, see how we can assist in any part of the referral management process. Doesn't have to be the entire thing. Maybe you already have most of it down and you just need help with, a little piece of the puzzle. We're more than happy to, engage in that conversation. But yeah, if you were listening and any of it resonated, we'd be more than happy to support.
Thank you, Janelle. Zeke?
Well, in contrast to Janelle, people are asking me for wisdom all the time. So I'm very well prepared to give this answer.
You are very wise.
But no, I just want to say I've really enjoyed having this conversation with both of you. It was a lot of fun. Hope we get to do it again soon. To the listeners out there, I would say, AI, I don't want to say temper your expectations because I have no idea what AI is going to be able to do tomorrow. We're going to wake up and it's going to be running the world. But for now, be realistic with how you use it. Be cautious, keep it simple, and you're going to see a lot of value out of how you use AI.
Yeah.
And Shahzad, what would you say? What's your wisdom?
Yeah, well, I think I just want to address again leadership's, the leadership of organizations that are looking to improve and kind of, people that are being asked to do more with less. That this is something that can actually help you. Your business is 40 to 80% of your business is actually referral driven, and if you're looking for ways to improve that process, we should talk.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you both. Thank you to the audience, and I'm sure we'll be back with more.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
thanks.